Peace, 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 peace. What's poppin', everybody? What's poppin'? We got a nice, good one today. Now, I'm probably gonna change a few times because it's probably gonna take me a good little while to get through it. Y'all know how it goes. It takes me a while. I gotta chop them up and do them bit by bit sometimes. But we're gonna see how it goes. We're gonna see how it goes. But we got a real good and a very important topic. I should have been done this. Should have been one of the very first foundational lecture breakdowns I did. But here we right. So the Hermetic Principles, right? This is very vital, very important when it comes to studying metaphysics. When a lot of people come to the conclusion that they are in a place where they want to take a spiritual path more so than a religious one, being confined to a religion, a lot of people don't know how to leave that religious mindset because, well, we don't often know where should we go next, what should we do from here. And what I recommend as far as a good a good spiritual foundation is to take the path of dealing with metaphysics, coming out of religion, going more into the metaphysics side because metaphysics deals more with the esoteric version of what is supposed to be religion. So if you come up in religion, when you get that esoteric version, it can give you more of a metaphysical storyline or understanding of that which is what has been traditionally taught to you as religion. So it's a good way for you to take it to the next level. So when I say metaphysics, right, a good way to get into that is to look into Hermeticism. Hermeticism is dealing with the Hermetic principles or the teachings of Hermes, as the Greeks called them, but as our ancestors called them, one Dahuti. So we're going to talk about the Hermetic principles because when one is trying to leave the religious mindset, because it's not really about the religion itself or what religion you choose, it's about understanding that you are dealing with a limited religious mindset. So you want to broaden your mind, you want to open your mind. The way to do that is to step into metaphysics, step into Hermeticism. Now, um, a lot of people, this is why you see so many people on the spiritual path having a relation to one ancient Egypt, because a lot of this stems from the ancient Egyptian pantheonic system. Now, true pharaonic thought or the true teachings of the pharaohs, the way the pharaohs lived, and the teachings and the initiations that they went through was hermetic material, not necessarily Egyptian pantheon. That was more so like religion versus philosophy, right? So if you really wanted to understand of the higher hierarchy, those of the high priests, those who are initiated, those who went through the schools of thought through the pyramids, then you dealt with Hermetic thought. You dealt with the philosophy side of it versus the religious and the storytelling of it all. So everybody was not initiated into the higher science. That's something we have to remember. So if that was the case in those times, then it's quite safe to say that not everyone is going to be equipped for this knowledge in today's time. So this is not something that you force on people because it takes a special way of thinking to, to expound on it, to even gravitate towards it, right? So that's first things first. Now, these principles run very, very deep, and it can take you a long time to fully understand and embody them. It's like each time you come back to them, you may understand them in a new way or on a deeper level. So, and in times, it's these principles that's going to help you to master your mind as a whole. So if you're getting into, you wanted to master mind, wanted to master yourself, wanted to step more into your divine nature, then this is what you need to be studying. This is what you need to be dealing with as far as a good head start, a good point of foundation. So these seven hermetic principles can be applied, and you see them applied all throughout all religions, and we're going to touch on why that is. Okay, so when we move on now, The Hermetic laws are axioms or philosophical and scientific principles that were taught by Tahuti, or as we properly actually spell it with a D, it's like DJ, pronounced in a way of Dahuti, but it's also known as Stoth and also known as Hermes. Okay, so what we know is these deity type figures have different names throughout different cultures and different regions as it translates. But for all purposes here, we're going to refer to it as the teachings of Tahuti. The teachings of Tahuti, right? So, but whenever you see Hermes, whether it says Hermes, Thoth, or Tahuti, we talking about the same entity, right? It's the same entity we're talking about. Now, as far as with Tahuti, he revealed to mankind medicine, chemistry, law, art, astrology, music, rhetoric, magic, philosophy, geography, mathematics, especially geometry, anatomy, and oratory. So, Hermeticism is a philosophical system that is primarily based on the perpetuated teachings of Hermes Trismegistus. Megistus. These teachings are contained in the various writings that's attributed to Hermes. So, because we know the wisdom word is based on Greece, it's based on the ancient Greek, a lot of things that predate that and that's outside of that is not going to be credited as such. They're only going to go to the Greek system, even though the Greeks went to learn from those other, went to learn from the Kush, learn from the Kush and learn from the ancient Egyptians. Even though they did, this is where the credits start. So we know that we recognize that we already know what that is. Nothing to really trip ourselves over. We just gonna take what we need and discard of the rest, right? Because we know history and everything of its nature has been whitewashed. We know that all of these things like to be accredited to those of, specific types of people, but we know the truth and we know how those things are, right? And because when you get into metaphysics, when you get into the occult, you leave more out of the physical world because you know that so much of this has been tampered with, so much of this has been meddled with. You don't bank your identity on it so much because you take the inner journey. So you know who you are from the inside out. So you actually begin to defy the physical means of your identity anyway. That's why, in a sense, a lot of spiritual people are seen as more delusional types because they defy those physical boundaries that most people identify themselves with. Now, to be clear, the writings and all of this is considered to be, this is, we talking about antiquity for the most part. When we talking about antiquity, this is like pre flood biblical times, and I hate to really use that as a reference, but in terms of just to kind of try and meet people where they are, right? Because we talking about an old world. When I say old world, when I say antiquity, I'm referring to a period that predates the current Christian Judeo model society that we know and that has been in existence for the past 6,000 years or so, however many years or so, 2,000 years or so, 3,000 years or so. So prior to that, the world, things were perceived a different way. The world was run a different way. So these concepts, the concepts of Christianity, which people think is all there has ever been, is very fairly recent. So these teachings, when you're talking about Hermeticism, when you're talking about, ancient Egyptian, when you're talking about all of this, this is an old world. This is an old time. So we are dealing with having to deal with old world knowledge in a different place and time. So you have to make it correlate to your present time if you're going to use it. If you can't use it in your current place and time, well, what are you going to do with it? So you have to be able to make use of it. So that's what a lot of your rituals entail. So when you burn certain incense, right? When you burn certain candles with certain herbs, certain oils, you rub certain oils, do certain things. These things reiterate from a different period in time. These things can activate certain parts of your brain, certain parts of your memory, certain parts of your coding that will, that's what those particular types of things do. That's how, literally, how aromatherapy works. They say, oh, well, certain smells activate certain memories. Well, if we talking in terms spiritually, metaphysics or quantum physics wise, that can also be referenced to a different place in time, because remember, time is cyclical. All time is happening all at once. That's a different conversation for another time. But see, once you get into these hermetic principles, it's the foundation for all of that type of thinking, all of your metaphysical thinking and all of that whatnot. So that's what this is in reference to. A lot of your myths, your legends of old were written about the golden age or the heroic age. So this is different periods of humanity along the chronology of the human race. Not, we're not just talking about what the Western world says is. Not in reference to that. We are talking about the old world of antiquity that they want you to forget about. So that's what the occult knowledge encompasses. The occult knowledge is pretty much like, think of it like a box. If you were to take everything from that old world and put it away, it's in the occult box. So everything from the old world is in the occult box. So everything they used to do of old times that they call demonic, devil, all that goes in the occult box, because it comes from a different world. It's no longer of use now, because that's not the perception that we have. That's something that we are limited to now. That's the whole point of it. That's part of colonization. You want to take a people's spiritual identity. You want to make them, you want to second guess it. You want to do everything to make them turn their backs on their spiritual identity, because that's beyond just your physical. That's a higher sense of living. That's a higher sense of being, right? So when we're moving along now, like I was saying, in times of antiquity, myth is an ancient mode of thinking. So the Eurocentric view denotes fantasy or surreal experience. So the way the ancestors looked at it, the way myth is told, the lessons that it teaches, it requires a different mode of thinking. There's geometry laced in there. There's quantum physics laced in there. That's if you know how to see it. But Eurocentric view just denotes fantasy and surreal experience, because it lacks the ability to be able to understand and interpret that. So, because you got to remember, the Eurocentric view, everything about it is fairly new. It's fairly new. If we in tune and in customs with our ancestors, we've been here thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Never mind what they've been talking about. Indigenous people been here thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So if you've been here that much longer, tens of thousands of years, maybe hundreds of thousands of years, you probably got a better grasp on how you got here. Versus when you're fairly newer and lacking that type of understanding. So mythology is ancient philosophy, it's ancient science, and when it's examined within the context of an ancient cultural belief system, it's a vehicle of truth. You see, mythology is a form of documentation. It serves as a measure of human possibilities. That's why it's the golden age. That's why it decreases down. Golden age, silver age, bronze age. But then it does go to the heroic age, and then you got the iron age. So it's a decrease, it's a degradation. So it's a measure of human possibilities. It shows us how much we have fallen and devolved. That's what it's showing you. See, we went from these abilities to where we currently are. That's a devolving, right? So um Tahuti is the personification of universal wisdom or truth, the God of knowledge, so to speak, the God of wisdom. This is who we know him as. This is the origin of what we know as alchemy, writing, the scribe. All of these things come out of one Tahuti. So alchemy in itself is the prototype to chemistry. So instead of completely doing away with the nature of what is science, what is alchemy, You just make it into something that deals with the exterior or the exoteric versus the esoteric version of it. Because, see, with the esoteric version, there's a progress of getting back to the divine nature, trying to get back to where we once were. That's what esotericism is all about. That's what the purpose of everything is about, according to esotericism. It's all about you getting back to your true nature and what you truly are. Everything else is just some illusion. The more we fall, the more we fall into the illusion. That's pretty much the concept of it. So alchemy is your work. Alchemy, your transformation, your transmutation, going from lead to gold, from a lower sense of self to a greater sense of self, and recognizing and connecting with the true source. That's what all that entails. That's what all that has to do with. Now, a lot of the symbolism, a lot of the things that you learn in Hermeticism, in pertaining to the Hermetic principles, is going to be very symbolically related to a lot of things you see pertaining to Freemasonry, or what they say, has to do with the symbolism of Freemasonry. And that's because Hermeticism is of importance to the Masonic scholars because he was the author of Masonic initiation rituals, which were borrowed from the mysteries. This is why people say it came out of Egypt. This is what they mean. They don't mean that they were in ancient Egypt calling themselves Masons and practicing Masonic rituals. No, what they mean is everything that makes up those Masonic rituals now, everything that they got that from came from there. They are not the originators, though. See, understand that the Freemasons are not those ones who originate those symbols that people so reference and connect to the Freemasons. That's just something. The Freemasons are the custodians. You're not gonna catch me. I'm not gonna be one of those people who is always putting the blame and everything on the Freemasons because I know better than it. They just the carriers of the knowledge. And it does so happen historically a lot of people are in your Freemasons or your Rosicrucians or in your secret societies because we're talking about a period in time where there is no other means of getting this information. Just understand, anybody with some power study the occult. You should. Everybody should now, today in time. You should study the occult. It's not about that being what's oh so bad. You just have to understand that people just have different intentions with what they choose to do with knowledge. That's just the truth of the matter. It's just like, well, a gun wouldn't really hurt nobody unless somebody pick the gun up and want to shoot somebody with the gun. So it's all about your perception. So I'm not gonna be one of them people that do that because I understand it. And I also understand that our ancestors, in the process of them continuously moving to different regions of the world and embodying their ways in different places before the whole world conquering, it was a necessary thing to do so that the knowledge could survive, because you didn't want it to just be completely desolate with, because there would come a time that we would wake up and we would need it again. So where would we find it? So you have to have the not the ability to see through and pierce the veil of what is told to you that's evil, so that you can obtain the true knowledge. Because that's the trick of today's society, is tell you that, oh, it's scary, it's evil, don't touch that, so you don't go into it and get the knowledge. And it's not for everybody to get. That's why it's there. That's the place of it. In ancient times, they had methodologies of knowing exactly who is who and who's supposed to be granted the knowledge, whether that was bloodline, whether that was by being specially gifted, psychically gifted, or whatever the case may be. But there was a means. We don't live in that time. So you have to be able to take that ancient knowledge and make it relevant for today. And in today's time, whoever can truly pierce and be able to see what that is who it's made for. If you can see it, then it's for you. It's really as simple as that in today's time, because it's as accessible as it is, because we're in the Aquarian age, right? Because we are in the Aquarian age. So that's why you will see so many symbolic things in Freemasonry, or people say it's tied to Freemasonry, because their rites and orders, their symbols come out of that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they are all equipped with the knowledge of knowing what that is, because they are not. That is not the thing. There is a hierarchy. There's always been a hierarchy, even in ancient times. Not everybody in the mystery system went to the highest level and obtained the highest level of knowledge. So that's just it, it is how it is. It is how it is, right? So, we know that. And so, like I say, that's why people will tell you it comes out of ancient Egypt. And even when they make the connection to the Moors and say, oh, well, it came from the Moors, and that's because when you look at it in the writings of Tahuti, it was translated to Arabic by the Moors. So therefore the Moors put it in Arabic. They are the ones who translated it. See, a lot of these secret societies started coming together, some of them came out of Arabic knowledge. So you got to remember that the world wasn't like it is now. Everybody wasn't just intermingling with everybody everywhere. There was conquering going on, right? There was conquering that was happening. So it was translated by the Moors. So a lot of secret mystical knowledge came out of Arabic thought, because it came from the Moors. And so a lot of those Moors who carried that secret society or secret mystery teaching knowledge were later the Egyptians who had left from out of Egypt and carried that sense of thought with them. So when you do the study, that's what is there. That's what teaches you. So when you look at, there's a book called People of the Secret. I think I'm gonna do a breakdown on that book um all together, just to put it out there. But there's a book called People of the Secret that kind of gets into this. You hear people like Eileen Bay talk about it. You hear your Bobby Hemmings talk about it. You have to, when you reading through, you have to be able to read between the lines, and you got to be able to put two and two together. You got to be able to see how they are using specific certain words to describe certain things. That's the game. That's the way. That's the language. But it's fun. If I'm being honest with you, it's kind of like being a treasure hunter. It's kind of like being on an adventure, because you never know what you're gonna discover. You never know what you're going to come into. You never know. And it's always something so life changing for you. So you searching for gold when you take that inner journey. It's deep like that. So the Western world, when you talking about Hermeticism, Hermetic thought, the Western world, or the world of academia. Okay, so when we say academia, we're talking about who do Harvard and them people, or Yale and them people, who are your most Europeanized education systems, who are they looking to pertaining to this? And they look at the works by one Walter Scott, and he wrote the Hermetica. Now, like I say, you got to discern carefully. So you want to read through different takes and different interpretations. For us as melanated people, I recommend looking at Ancient Future by one Wayne Chandler. Check out the book Wayne Chandler. If you do have the membership, you should be able to check in your library, and it should be there and available for you in the references, as a file up under this full Hermetic Principles teaching. You should see that file. If you have trouble finding it, shoot me an email and I'll help you locate it, or I just send it to you. But I recommend Ancient Future. But there are different writings that are based on the Hermetic teachings. And like I say, the more that you study it, the more you are going to uncover with it. And as you read different writings of it, is going to unlock different things within you as well, right? So when you study Hermeticism or studying Hermeticism, it provides esoteric and metaphysical understanding that allows you to understand the language of symbols. So you will be able to, it's literally like a different language. So when you go to a restaurant and you see a logo, you won't just see a logo. You will see certain energetic impressions on your subconscious based on the shapes, whether it's a triangle or a square, based on the colors, based on when you're listening to certain music at certain frequencies. Things will be different to you now. You'll have more open channels in the data that you are receiving. because you are able to receive much more information because you know much more things are impacting you now. You are now more aware of it. So now when you see these symbols, it's not just that, you know that it's speaking to you metaphysically. So when you watch movies, right, there's different symbolic references in movies when they wear certain colors. There's certain emotions that they are trying to present, or there are certain ideas that they are trying to present. Certain things in the environment, if they're in a wheat field, that's kind of symbolic to it, an afterlife. It's just different means of different things, and these things will speak to you spiritually, and no one gets the same message. Your message is going to be unique to you because nobody has lived the life you lived and walked the path that you have walked and been affected the way that you are. So nobody perceives your reality like you. So what you see and what you express is unique and a unique impression. That's why it's important that we learn to be our authentic selves, because we do not know what we are expressing or giving off and what that is saying to other people's energetic fields. So you may not be being receptive the way that you want because you're not being your true nature. And other people's energetic fields can pick up on that, can pick up on those restrictions that you holding back. And that can in turn hold you back because even though you're not verbally saying it or showing it, the hidden world, in the hidden world, it is being expressed to you. So, or it is being expressed to others. And that is something that we have to come into understanding when we realize that everything is energy. So that's why we have to learn the underlying, these principles, these hermetic principles, because they are very much life changing. It's change your life because it's going to change how you perceive your life. You change your mind to change your life. When you change the way you think, it will in turn change how you perceive your reality. All right, so if we was to move along, let's go to the next slide. So the hermetic teachings are found in all lands among all religions, but are never identified by any sect. So these ancient mystery systems were imparted to, let's say, if we're talking over in, overseas, if we was to say to India, then you have, in Persia by their indigenous inhabitants. But it degenerated with the influx of, the conquerors, the colonizers, those who came and conquered. So it got lost merging, with theology and philosophy. So your higher secret mystery teachers were replaced by pagan priests who aspired for power because of such high Greek interest, because it's now run by foreign invaders. So out of the 42 Hermetic works, only two remained, and that was the Emerald Tablets and the Divine Pymander, right? Because that's, looking around 389 AD, when the order was given to burn the Great Library of Alexandria, because they were knowing that that's the only way to ensure the collapse of a culture, is to totally obliterate its history. And we've seen that to have, you know, deemed to be true all across the board in multiple instances. If you take away the history, it's very hard for those people to be able to recuperate. Okay, so now, all right, so now looking at this is Poimandres and the Great Dragon. So when you read the Divine Pymander, this is what it talks about. But it's discussion, but the Poimandres, the Great Dragon, the dragon has been seen as evil, or has an evil connotation. But in the vision of Hermes, the Great Mind, or the mind of the universe, came to Hermes as a dragon. Now it is also good to note that this is seen to be as an allegory representing to lift the veil of Isis to expose the practical and fundamental function of the axioms, um, So as far as the Divine Pymander, it's very easy. You can Google it and you can just easily read it. But it is available in different occult texts. I know I read it in The Secret Teachings of All Ages by One Manly P. Hall. It has it in there. But like I said, you can get on Google and just put it in, and you can read that or get access to that very easily. And read that for yourself and kind of see what that's about. Okay, so the Hermetic Principles, right? The Hermetic Principles are seven in number. All right, so there's seven in number. Seven is closely related to the physical temple and has to do with the spiritual completion. So when we talk about seven, as far as numerology, when you're seeing seven, numerology is usually in reference to a spiritual message, an internal message. Lessons around seven has to do with trust of one's inner intuition. So that seven has to do with spiritual completion. That's why you have 7 days in a week. That's why there's 52, which is five plus seven. It's five plus two is seven. It's 52 weeks in a year. In the Christian Bible, the um the earth was created in 6 days and God rested on the seventh day. Some psychologists have stated that the age of seven is the age of reason, and twice that age is the age you go into puberty. Age 21 is maturation. So there's seven cardinal colors. There's seven keynotes in a musical scale. Seven continents, seven seas. Originally, there were seven planets called the seven governors by the ancients. Seven angels in Revelation. There's seven holes in the body. There's seven virtues: faith, hope, charity, strength, prudence, temperance, justice. There's seven deadly sins: pride, greed, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth. So the number seven has that vibration of emphasizing spiritual lessons, of bringing one into spiritual completion. So the Hermetic Principles are seven in number, and they are extremely symbolic of divine or universal cohesiveness that permeates the core of our very existence. Now, the seven Hermetic axioms of Tahuti: the principle of mentalism, the principle of correspondence, the principle of vibration, the principle of polarity, the principle of rhythm, the principle of cause and effect. Now, the principle of mentalism, um, now the Kabbalion is the great work that breaks down or presents the seven Hermetic principles as well. And again, if you are in the membership, you should have that resource or that file available to you. You should have that available in your library. So just take a look and you'll be able to find it. But the all is mind and the universe is mental. That comes from the Kabbalion. Now the all or God is mind. That means that all is the substantial reality underlying all the visible manifestations and appearances that we know as the material universe. Okay? So the all is undeniable, although theology assigns human qualities to the supreme in order to be able to comprehend the incomprehensible. It is undefinable. It cannot be defined. All right, so the all is often always depicted as a man. When we say God, God is always depicted as a man, the Father, and the all is everything, and everything is the all. So it's everything coming from one source. the source of everything. That is what is represented in the all. So that which is the fundamental truth, the substantial reality, is beyond true naming, but the wise men call it the all, and that's from the Kabbalion. Okay, so that which is the substance of everything, that's what is called in terms of the Hermetic Principles. So you just started that, okay, everything is everything. That's what Lauren Hill meant when she said everything is everything, right? So if everything comes from one source, whatever's meant to be will truly be. That's an advanced spiritual way of thinking, you know? And it's rooted in this principle of mentalism, right? Um, now Aboriginal inhabitants of the Indus Kush area, melanated people had belief systems that functioned on the universal principles of the cosmos. So, being monotheistic, cosmic order of laws, it was after invasions that everything became warped and perverted as being, polytheistic, because it was always a multiple means of expression, the one source. So, it's like if we are all of that same source, then I am Rakia expressing as the source expressing itself, as the all expressing itself. So it puts one more in a deeper connection with nature, with the universe. It puts one in harmony with, you know, with everything. You know, but it was that mindset that led to the indoctrination of the whole world, through Brahmanism ultimately. So the Crusades, Inquisition, primarily to force various so-called pagan populations or indigenous, groups of people and civilizations to accept a church and a God that they did not want. Not to mention that it was motivated by economic greed. So true transformation of consciousness, the root of what those mystery systems from those indigenous cultures were about, the transformation of consciousness, that was lost. That translation was lost. That deep spiritual understanding was left in, it was only pieces of it remaining. So what's left in your secret societies here or there, some different pieces of religion, some you know, remnants of other religions and those things of indigenous people. Some of those indigenous people who held on to their traditional matriarchal spiritual systems, you know. So the all or God is truly unknowable, for only the all itself can comprehend its own nature and being. So in that sense, right? So here's how we would look at it if we were just to break that down in terms. The all must be all that really is. There can be nothing existing outside of the all, or it wouldn't be the all. So there is nothing in the whole of existence that can exist outside of the all. So it must come from source. So it must be a part of the grand scheme. That's the depth of taking things to a metaphysical level. That's what you understand, or how you can further advance in the mastery of self, mastery of mind, when you grasp and embody these certain types of principles. Also, it's important to note that, think about it this way: the all must be infinite, for there is nothing else to define, confine, bound, limit, or restrict it. So it must be infinite in time or eternal. So it must have always continuously existed, for there is nothing else to have ever created it and something can never evolve from nothing. It must exist forever, for there is nothing to destroy it, and it can never be, even for a moment. That's the whole thing of when you see the snake eating itself. That's what that represents. The ongoing, and the ongoing. That's part of that concept when you see that symbology. So that's what that symbol represents. So when you see that symbol, it's a means of understanding or a representation of the all, right? So um the manner, here's to take this even further. The manner of human creation that corresponds to that of the all is the human ability to create mentally, to imagine. As we create mentally, we use no outside materials. It is simply the spirit of thought or the living mind that pervades our mental creations. So that is how we are God, or how we are of the all, how we are creators of our reality, how we are co creators, because we create via the same process, because the all is mind. The all of God is mind, the all is mental. So when you use your mental, when you imagine, you are inciting the power of the all, because that is how it creates through the principle. That's the principle of mentalism. So the all creates mentally, as do we create mentally. So we are co-creators, the children of God or of the Most High. For anything to be, a thought must precede it. Through this principle, it's believed that God is consciousness or thought, and the universe is a manifestation of the mind of God. So, using this law, we too can harness the power of our minds to create the life that we want. That is the empowerment and what it gives you, because it gives you the connection to what is within your own self. All right, so now let's move to the next one. All right, now all things in life move in cycles or continuous spirals. It's just like time. The ancients knew that time is an illusion subject to spatial manipulation by the wise who understood it. Time is cyclic. You see, in Western Euro American culture, time is linear. English language, you say hours, minutes, seconds, past, present, and future. You see, the distinction between the past, the present, and the future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. See, time, in other words, is an illusion. So, all things in life move in cycles or continuous spirals. And as you dig deeper into this principle of mentalism, that's something that you get a deeper understanding into as well. Now, when we look at the double helix of the DNA, the molecular basis of heredity in organic life spirals up and out. Blood spirals through the veins. Our hair spirals up. Tornadoes and hurricanes also spiral as they move. So spiral, like spiritual, it comes from the Latin spire, meaning to coil. So that in its sense has a connection. And when you look into the sacred geometry and the the mathematics, which some would say is the math of God pertaining to this spiral as well. So all of these things, that the deeper, the more you get into them, the more layered they are, and the deeper these concepts can be, and the more you can build on in that spiritual foundation. Now, meditation, right? Meditation is seems to induce the experience of an altered and higher state of consciousness, and through the study and use of it, human beings can create and achieve on a level much closer to the divine. Now, this was something that was said by one Carl Jung. Now, thoughts materialize as reality, so you are what you think. If you knew the power of your thoughts, you'd never think another negative thought again. You see, Carl Jung, who was heavy in the study of, you know, astrology and occult, how it connected with psychology, he said that the subconscious is the abode of the emotions, memories, habits, and instinct, also called the instinctive mind. It establishes the order and assures that the incredible complexity of bodily processes will continue without conscious effort. The superconscious mind is that level of mind that few of us ever encounter. Here is where divinity resides along with the soul, the spirit, the being of light that spiritual teachers regard as the true self, all knowing and all loving. This is the divine mind, where Hermes met the great dragon and where Jacob saw God's face. So this is when, in reference in terms of psychology, was described as the higher self, right? So it's important to note also that, when you study sacred geometry, it helps you to understand the form of creation. So at some point also, I'm gonna dig into that in a separate point in time. That's something that we'll talk about in the future. But so the three principles of mathematics is sacred geometry, algebra, and analysis. So understand that studying this information, right? You learn that the language of spirit is images or symbols. So this is why your first form of communicating as a child, they tell you to draw a picture, right? You ever notice that when you look at, when they're trying to get a child to recollect something in a movie or something, they always have them sit down and draw a picture. And based on whatever that child is drawing tells you a lot about what's going on or what have you. That's why. Because that's how the subconscious mind communicates. That's how your spirit, your that mind communicates. Now there are over 125 common symbols to all of the ancient world. So their meaning are analogous and they originate at the prehistoric epoch shrouded in mystery. Whether you want to say Atlantis, Lemuria, the land of Mu, or Mu, depending on how you want to go into that, that's where you get into looking at where the origin of these things come from, because it's all seem to be rooted around one particular idea. Now there's an author who goes by the name of his name is James Churchward, and he covers it pretty well, breaking down the symbols in terms of the world's first original religion from the Lemurians. So he wrote the sacred symbols of Mu, and in this book he describes how the teachers from Mu went out and taught the people of the world based on the one belief system, that of the Osiris system. So I do recommend that book, if you're looking into occult symbolism, that maybe we'll cover that at some point in the future as well. Now, ancient hermeticists, right? Ancient hermeticists state that form, as expressed in geometric imagery, was the formula those of the ancient world used to comprehend the divine and its method of creating the material universe around us. Now, that's a concept. If you do study Kabbalah, Hebrew, the Hebrew letters, they all of these things are connected. It has to do with that type of math, a form of sacred geometry. Now, when you're looking at the right eye of Horus, sacred geometry is connected to the right eye of Horus. That's like a system. It's like a symbol of a system of initiation based on left brain discipline. So, left brain discipline in antiquity, or when you're talking about through the mystery schools, it's dealing with sacred geometry, it's dealing with mathematics, it's dealing with analysis in that sense, in that way, shape, or form, in terms of the left brain discipline. So it creates the web by which all things are bound in the material universe. So it brings things into form, understanding form, things once they're brought into light. So physically, what makes these things how they are in the physical. So that's why writing letters, numbers, everything is speaking to your subconscious, right? So you have to be mindful of what you put in your mind. So shapes generate the laws of mathematics as well as physics, language, and biology. So sacred geometry isn't just lines on a page, but rather the sacred geometric motions of spirit, the void of nature. So think about people who can see sound. They are able to see the motions of sound and what shapes that creates. That is what shapes the universe. Remember, in the beginning was the word. You think about words, speaking is vibration, tonal frequency. So all of that is interconnected and it's all layered in just this very first principle. So the deeper you dig into these principles, into these terms of these subjects of metaphysics, the deeper your understanding will be as far as esotericism, how to empower yourself with the things that you've already been taught, but just how to take it to a more spiritual level or a deeper level. Now let's look at the principle in terms of the principle, the tube Taurus, which is a primal shape of the universe. Now, there's a California physicist. His name is Stan Tenen, and he identified what's known as the tube Toru, right? Now, it's a rotating circular pattern. So it rotates and circulates until a small hole appears in the center. So this is what's considered to be the primal shape of the universe. In its most primal shape of the actual universe is this particular figure. So it moves in on itself and no other shape can do that. Now Tenon traced the spiral of a tube torus from the middle of its circular pattern. Then he removed it out the middle, and in it he placed inside a tetrahedron. Okay? And he found that by shining light through it so that its shadow appeared on a 2D surface, he could generate all the letters of the Hebrew alphabet exactly in the shape that they are written. He also found that by changing the shape inside to different positions, he could project all the Greek letters. And he could also project all the Arabic letters as well. So this is, and you can look this guy up. His name is Stan Tenen. Right? Stan Tenen. And so this is pertaining to, the law of mentalism, because it projects the because if you study the Kabbalah, it teaches you the formation of the universe, which is pretty much, through through the letters itself. So even through Greek letters, when you're dealing with Greek mythology, you know, these things portrayed a higher science and quantum sciences that was portraying very spiritual messages. And not only that, you got to think about in terms of these letters are symbols. They're symbols, and they are geometric figures projected specifically through light. So that tells you a lot about, and let me move this out of the way so to be sure, you know, to see Tennant. That's how you spell his name there. So, you know, studying Kabbalah is powerful in understanding the formation of the universe, and the formation of creation, and understanding the workings of your reality, because that's all magic ultimately is. It's altering, it's changing, it's manipulating energy. So you basically just changing your reality. You're just changing what's around you. Now, the Vesica Pisces. Now, the Vesica Pisces is when a circle is next to another circle and it's exactly the same size, so that the edge of one circle passes through the center of the other circle, right? So that common area created by this intersection right here, is the Vesica Pisces, or the vessel of the fish. Now, in ancient times, this symbolism for this was symbolism for the feminine creative force, or mother spirit that gave birth to worlds and to the gods that maintain them. So when we see this symbol, this is what this meant in ancient times. So we've seen this. Think about how many, and in many references you've seen this symbol. And it's also found in pre-patriarchal India, known as the jagged yoni, or the womb of the world. Now within the Vesica Pisces, you can put two primordial equilateral triangles that fit inside of it. That's the sacred geometry in how things are perfectly geometrically aligned. These are still keys and things that we don't completely have all the pieces to be able to solve some of the mystic puzzles of the world, like, say, the pyramids. That is something that has been lost to us. That knowledge has been lost to us, at least for what we know in terms of to the common people, because we really don't know what's really out there. We really don't know what's really reserved. And let me move this. We really don't know what's really reserved. You know, I definitely believe it's very possible that there are occult libraries out there with very ancient texts that, you know, are unknown to the common world, that people have no clue are in existence, that, speak on ancient knowledge that most people would not have an interest in, or a means of even knowing exists. So this is just another extent of looking at symbolism and understanding symbols and how it speaks to the mind. Now, this symbol denotes the Hermetic geometric concept of spirit being projected through the void in six directions. Okay, so initiations, what in time would become the foundation of the creative process in many cultures, symbolizes creation. So this is like, you know, this is what this symbolizes. Now the next procedure in the geometric order of creation, according to the Hermeticists, was the rotation of spirit on an axis, creating a sphere. Now, the circle creates the parameters by which spirit begins to operate and create within. So, the Hermeticists believe that straight lines are masculine and curved lines are feminine, but in order to create any all things, curved lines must be brought into generation. So with the circle or the sphere now in place, inception of the seven laws which will create the basis of universal order takes place. This is accomplished by connecting the various lines and angles which creates a specific geometric pattern indicative of one of the seven Hermetic axioms. So each geometric symbol shown equates to an axiom, and we're going to look at all of the symbols in a second, but this is why there's a circle when they do magic, because you have to encircle that power. That's what they're symbolizing, because you create within that circle. So this is the sixth. Well, not the sixth. This is the geometric symbols shown equating. So here are your symbols. So you got the six lines going out. You have what looks like the Star of David, right? Or the six-pointed star. You have the sphere. Really, this should be like clear. It shouldn't be anything in there, but I don't know what it is. But you have the sphere, right? You got the five-pointed star, right? So these are all the symbols, right? And this right here, this is the flower of life. This is the flower of life. But each geometric symbol shown here equates to each axiom. So the flower of life is held by Hermeticists as the the ultimate of all geometric symbolism. So this is like the big, this is the big one right here. Oh wait, let me go back real quick. Let me just move this out of the way. So this is the big one right here, right? Now the symbolism is comprised of numerous Vesica Pisces. If you can see them in there, that's why I showed you the Vesica Pisces. The numerous Vesica Pisces overlapping one another at their respective centers. So everything in existence, whether past, present, or future, is contained within this structure. Everything is within this structure right here. It contains all of our laws of biology and physics, as well as languages, current and obsolete. Okay, so that's what is in the power of the flower of life. So if you can come real acquainted with this symbol, right? Right? If you can get real acquainted with it, if you can look at it a lot, if you can get it embedded in a lot, this is what this symbol is. It's the flower of life. So now when you Google the flower of life, you're gonna see where this symbol has been shown, has been in many different places all over the world, right? Symbol found all over the world. So it's not that's the flower of life. Well, that's it's out of that there. But so that's what you see when you look. Okay, so you know there's something more that you can definitely look more into, and it'll definitely be something that we'll talk more about at another point in time as well. Now, the platonic solids. So the platonic solids, right? Let me try and get myself up out of here somewhere so I'm not in the way, right? Now the platonic solids, there's five three-dimensional solid shapes, each containing all congruent angles and sides. So if circumscribed with a sphere, all vertices would touch the edge of the sphere. Now these were linked by Plato to the four primary elements and heaven. So the application of these shapes to music. Alright, so when you're talking about the platonic solids, right? So the application of these shapes to music is important to sound healing therapy. That's how you get sound healing therapy. The ancients have always professed a belief in the music of the spheres, a vibrational ordering to the universe. So the book of there's this book called The Subtle Body. It gives a good breakdown of that in relation to the different geometric and mathematical patterns and etc. and whatnot. So when you're looking into that book, it'll kind of give you a good little breakdown as far as looking at that. But as you can see, looking at the solids, each one of them is connected to a different element. So you got the tetrahedron, four-sided, connected to fire. The octahedron, eight-sided, connected to air. The hexahedron, connected to earth. The icosahedron, connected to water. The dodecahedron, connected to the ether. So looking at all of the platonic solids, getting into further into sacred geometry, which in itself is a whole nother school of study. So it's like, imagine if you were in college, right? So this how the initiation system works. So imagine you in college. So you might decide what your major is, and you might have a specialty within it. So let's say you get initiated, you get into metaphysics as a broad, but you might want to start to specialize along the lines of something like a sacred geometry, which can take you into numerology, a lot of different things. So just depending on where your path is trying to take you. So for me, I ultimately was seeking self healing a lot. So in seeking that self healing, that took me to a multitude of places that taught me a lot about energy, and in terms of teaching me how to heal myself, as in what I was looking for, and which I'm still looking for, of course, because it doesn't ever really stop. It's always an ongoing thing. Now, mathematically, these are the only five shapes in the world whose vertices or points match the inside of a sphere. So that's what make them the platonic solids. So many traditions envision the sphere as the symbol of the beginning, as a symbol of the beginning of the universe, like a big womb. Think about it. So hence the importance of the three spheres identified with each of the shapes. So from a healing perspective, one could imagine reducing an illness or an issue or an imbalance down to its symbolic state, to then achieve health by reconstructing the body, or even thoughts to fit a more solid geometrical shape. So this is the thinking behind healing methods, including numerology and symbol healing. This is anything pertaining to symbols. Drawing of geometric shapes is a form of healing, because you are kind of like isolating specific frequencies or elemental frequencies that can correlate within your body, therefore bringing out healing. This is also what is known as invocation. If you think about, when you see, there are symbols, a circle and triangles and four, five pointed stars. So this is the same thing. It's just in terms of how you are able to interpret and understand that everything is everything. It's all rooted in the same principles. So it's a matter of just understanding, right? When you're looking at all right, so now this here, it looks similar to a zygote. If we're looking at this to your left over here, in terms of thinking about cells, thinking about splitting, multiplication of the body, like an embryo, right? So it looks similar to a zygote. So this is showing the role of that geometry plays in the genesis of human life. So when I say zygote, it's like a seed, a fertilized seed. So it's like what comes into being a nurture baby, right? So that's where the baby grows from, zygote, right? So geometry is even present in the makings of creation, even of the human body. So this is how you rope yourself into it. It's how you rope even, this into it. So you see, science acknowledges that prior to conception, the ovum is a sphere that also contains the female pronucleus, and that contains half of the chromosomes for creating a human being, right? So when that male sperm reaches and penetrates that ovum, conception commences, and that other half is brought too. The events which lead up to this event is extremely noteworthy and dramatizing this concept. Now, when once the chosen sperm penetrates the ovum, its tail breaks off and its head forms a sphere the same size as the female pronucleus, and these two merge, forming a perfect vesica Pisces, which contains the blueprint for all universal knowledge. Right? So all universal knowledge, the symbols for all universal knowledge is present during the creation of life. Right? You can see it. So the sperm and ovum pass through one another, creating the first cell identified as the human zygote. So this is what grows. This is what we can say guides the growth of the baby, of the zygote, because this knowledge is implemented and is symbolically expressed in just how it does its thing. um so the sperm and ovum pass through one another, creating the first cell identified as the human zygote, containing 44 plus 2 chromosomes. So next in the process is mitosis, where the opposite or the polar bodies are created that travel to the opposite ends of the cell nodes, forming northern and southern polarities. And this is something that we will talk about much later on in one of the other uh, principles that we'll discuss later. So the next phase is the formation of a tube, splitting the sphere in the chromosome in half, going right and half going left. So then from there you get the zygote that splits into 4 cells, which forms the tetrahedron inside of the sphere, which is an expression of sacred geometry in one of its most universally primordial dramatizations. So seeing it in that form is yet more emphasis of symbols of creations of the universe. So what that tells you is when a baby is being formed, it is synonymous with the Big Bang, of what created the universe. So when you were created, it's like a universe was created. This is profound. You understand? When you were created, you are your own universe. It's called universe. You are your own universe. So all of this is present in the creation of a human being. And then you get to the next division, which creates the 8 cells, and that creates the star tetrahedron. And this affirms conclusively that creation is from the formation of startup systems to the development of human beings is a geometric process. So, yes, that is why you study sacred geometry, so you can understand the formation of everything that there is. All right, now when we're looking at, let's take that off real quick. So when we look at the mystical tree of life, represented geometrically, within it you see the 5 and 6 pointed stars, the golden means rectangle, as well as the spiral. These are the basic geometric shapes that aid in the generation of all others. So this is something that, when you're looking at sacred geometry, it's the universal template that generates all form of the material universe. So understanding these principles, all of these things correlate, basically, so to speak. So, and that's another concept, and that's how you can see how deep and how layered it can be, because you can even look at it like it is all is everything is everything, because everything is kind of saying the same types of things, like it is all alluding to the same thing. So this must come from a source where it is all connected, until of course it was fell into hands where it was able to be used to manipulate and control the people. And after that took place for centuries of time, it's become a traditional norm. So much of people have forgotten. So when you have the people who are awake in these times, when you have the people who are aware of what's taking place out here, just know that that is, in today's time, your means of transcending, of transmuting in this world, is dealing with that push from the outside world, because don't let it really support in this system. But depending on how you come up, depending on your culture, that can vary. Some people may have more connection with their roots, and they are able to really tap into more, direct connection with what's in their bloodline. So some people are fortunate enough to have those connections. Then you got some people who may not have anything at all. So they have to just build from, and they have to really trust more in their own intuition and their own spiritual compass, and their own, even logic, so to speak, that's kind of leading them, that spirit to lead them, so that they able to draw from that what they soul supposed to experience, and pull that wisdom out of it, and gain on those and build up, and graduate in higher levels, because your experience is your experience. You learn these soulful lessons subconsciously, whether you know it or not. So it could be the simplest of life, and you could be learning the most intricate of spiritual understanding needed for your soul. That's how it works. See, we can't look at it from a physical perspective. We can't begin to understand how this thing can work from those higher octaves of thinking. We can't begin to process that. We really truly can't. So that's the meaning behind leaning out into your own understanding, because it's gonna be times where you're gonna be led, and you can't always understand why you led down the path that you led. But one day it's all gonna make sense to you. But you just gotta trust in your path. You just gotta trust in your path. So, but yes, the sacred geometry is even within the tree of life. It's even within the Kabbalah itself. If you look at it, you can see. You can see the shapes within it. You can see it.